So let's talk about Super Brawl. You and Max Payne team up to defeat the tag team champion Nasty Boys, but it's by DQ. 12 minutes and 37 seconds is the time of the match.
It was by DQ.
Yeah.
In a no DQ, I thought it was a no DQ match.
Well, I think we're getting to that.
Oh, wait, so we're talking Clash of the Champions.
This is Super Brawl.
Super Clash. Oh, got you.
Super Brawl's February.
Super Brawl is the one where Maxx suplexes Knobs, and with everything we know about the human anatomy, Knobs' spine should have snapped in half, right?
Yes.
I think Arn said, thank goodness that Knobs had the physiological makeup of a jellyfish, or he would have been broken in half. You know, Maxx was Daryl Peterson, great amateur wrestler, All-American for Iowa State. There was a little bit of conflict with Maxx and the Nasties. They ribbed him a little bit. And so I believe they thought it was intentional or not completely unintentional. But when Maxx grabs Knobs and you're waiting for that rotation, you're waiting for it either to be an overhead belly to belly or the more standard at the time, you know, Steiner belly to belly to the side. And it's kind of a combination of both. And Knobs lands front first, like on his collarbone area. It looks like he should be snapped in half. One of the sickest looking bumps, and I'm not a guy who likes to watch or will watch any of the botch videos. I don't find it fun to watch Sid's legs snap in half.
No.
You know, I don't like any of that stuff. This could have been horrible, and thank God it wasn't. And I think Knobs wrestled the next month with a pretty, no, I'd say reasonable. I mean, a decent injury. I mean, a pretty badly injured arm, and he was still out there the next month.
How do we reconcile what you just said, that the guy who's most famous for being thrown off the cage and putting his body through all of this tremendous torment and losing his ear and all this, I can't watch it.
I can't watch it because I think people watch The Cell with a different frame of mind. I don't think anybody's laughing at The Cell or just watching it to win.
I wasn't laughing when Sid broke his leg.
Yeah. I hate the word botch, you know, because it insinuates that if something's not done perfectly like a dance routine, that something's missing. And I don't believe wrestling should look like that.
It needs to look like a struggle.
Yeah, and I mean, Terry Funk would specifically put in things that didn't look like they were supposed to look. He reasoned that a back body drop shouldn't always look like a work of art. You know, you're charging somebody, he flips you, you're going to go ass over tea kettle, not majestically sailing. I love the majestic backdrops, and that's what we all aspired to do. We all aspire to take the Harley race backdrop. For my money, the best backdrop in the business now is AJ Styles. He's somebody who takes the backdrop that makes you catch your breath. Backdrops very rarely used these days, and that's a shame because the only move in anyone's offensive arsenal that requires the giver to bend down is a back body drop, and yet we rarely see a back body drop, but everybody's still bending down.
Wow.
And getting caught with whatever move it might be, and I was like, to make it feel, to suspend disbelief, you've got to establish, just for the sake of it making sense for all these other moves, you've got to establish the back body drop as a move that works, that people sell, that gets big pops, or else there's no reason for any of us to be bending over because there's no objective to it.
Yes.
Have I become a cranky old man now?
No, that's great. I'll be honest. I've never heard anybody talk about the importance of the backdrop and bending over. So,
but just going, I got off of that tangent because I was talking about the fact that Terry didn't think everything should look perfect, and that I think my kids will use, oh, what a botch that was, what a botch, and when I was watching as a fan, and I'm talking about 2015, 2016. And I clearly, as a fan, had my favorites among the women. I didn't realize, wow, there are some powerful forces like opposing women's fans who are almost watching with glee anytime someone from the opposing camp makes a mistake.
Yeah.
So I would see like botch, 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 and I'm thinking, that looks like great wrestling to me. I do like ice dancing, I like that type pairs figure skating, but that's not what ours is supposed to look like.
Right. So Meltzer didn't describe this as ice dancing. He says something more closely approximating a major car wreck at the interstate than a pro wrestling match.
Now this goes to which match?
Super Brawl.
Super Brawl. Okay, Super Brawl, the one where Knobs gets hurt. Okay.
They did about as good of a job with a clumsy situation regarding Missy Hyatt, in that she's been fired, but there's still many more months worth of pre-taped worldwide appearances. They explained she was at the Mayo Clinic getting her gums repaired, which is actually the funniest line of the show. Payne opened by suplexing both Nasty Boys out of their wrestling boots early until he was clipped at 5 minutes. Jack took a cold tag and ended up taking a totally psychotic Nestea Plunge bump off the apron, cracking the back of his head on the concrete. He got his head ran into the guardrail. He came up bleeding from the mouth and somehow wound up with internal bleeding and was hospitalized after the match. It's been said before and it'll be said again, but nobody in wrestling works harder than people like Cactus Jack or Sabu. But it's one thing to do moves that risk injury. It's another to do moves that guarantee injury. Shivani at this point mentioned the Vader angle from last year and talked about how Jack lost his memory and came back, ignoring Jack's interview saying he never lost his memory. Don't these people watch their own shows? Jack made a comeback, giving both men a DDT and tagged Payne, who did a suplex on Brian Knobbs that looked like it could have broken his arm and his neck because of how bad of the landing, but it, quote-unquote, only dislocated his shoulder, although there was fear he may have broken his shoulder as well, and that would actually sideline him for several weeks. Nowhere to press time how serious the injury turned out to be or how long he'll be out of action. They had to go right to the finish at that point because Knobbs was done, and Payne put Knobbs in the painkiller, which is the Fujiwara armbar, and Sags hit him with a guitar for the DQ. 3 stars. A car crash of violence. Great way to describe it.
Yeah, I think it was the Clash of the Champions, maybe a few weeks before that, where I hit Knobbs and Sags with the double cactus clothesline. So you talk about some serious tonnage going over that top rope, right?
Oh, yeah.
I was like the lean guy at 3. I was right about 300 at that time, and we were all probably about 300, so 900 pounds, you know, give or take, you know, 1,000 pounds, all hurtling over that top rope together. And I only did that move, you know, maybe I'd say the other craziest cactus clothesline was the one where I did it with Lita on my back, and I clotheslined Edge at WrestleMania 22, and that's where Lita and I had a talk. You don't have to do this, but if you do it at a certain point, you have to just jump ship. Do you think you can do that? Not a doubt in her mind. You know, I just got the little fuzzies there thinking about how badass that was, because I'm not, I guess you could stretch the definition and say I was involved in a move that could have hurt a woman, but the intention wasn't there.
Yeah.
It's just, she's on my back, I see Edge, I'm going to clothesline Edge, Lita happens to be on my back, and it all works out for the best. But that was a serious move, and that's one I was a little worried about. A lot of weight going over there. And now, yeah, I'd say it was a 3-star car crash, and taking the Nestea Plunge, you know, taking the Nestea Plunge when I know there's no room for upward growth, I think you could argue that's not wise, because that was one of the...
Why do it?
I don't know. I'd have to, if I went through my entire career, I mean, I probably did that move 20 times.
Wow.
But probably 10 of those times was on the indies in
That
Memphis.
nobody saw.
Going around the loop, doing it as a finish every night around the loop in Memphis, and finally saying to Robert Fuller, my back, I mean, it was purple and hideous. Like, I couldn't bump for about a month because I took that move three out of 4 nights. And we get the same thing, Jacko. I said, Rob, I don't think I can do it tonight. And he looked at me and he said, Jack, it's probably a good decision. Man's only got so many bumps left in his body. There's not too many people out there. And he talked to me about the importance of saving that bump. So I would say if I took it 20 times, that 10 of them were in those small situations. And there were times when it did make sense. You know, I mean, I could say now, knowing we know about head injuries, I never should have done it, because even if I got that chin tucked in my chest, which I absolutely did, it's the rattling. You know, it's like surviving a car crash.
Yes.
Boom, you're hitting, and I didn't realize it rattles your brain around inside your skull. and jars you. A lot of the stuff, not a lot, but some of the stuff I did was just jarring in that way. But that Nestea Plunge I did was something nobody else in the business would do. And
Was your first one against Mil Mascaras?
No. First one would have been 80, probably 88. I'm trying to think if I'd taken it. It was at a spot show for Memphis in front of maybe 200 people.
How'd you come up with that idea?
I wasn't planned. It was a six-man tag team, which is how you'd close a lot of the spot shows, where you'd work a couple times. You'd work in a singles and come back in either a tag or six-man. And when I took it was a gym floor, and I took it in a way where when I hit, my body was kind of slick. At that time, I wore like the straps and not the shirt. And I kind of slid with the bump, and it wasn't that bad. But then I took it, maybe a week or two later on concrete, and it just, I couldn't even conceive of anything that painful.
That was the worst at that point?
That was the worst. But then when I took it in Memphis, the first time, Robert Fuller got in the car, and he was really concerned about how they could finish the first match. Jeff had gotten Robert's loaded boot. That loaded boot was a big deal in Memphis, and Jeff had gotten it, and Robert was going to pay the price, but they're looking at doing 4 weeks, 6 weeks. Keep in mind, you're running the same towns every single week. And he said, "Damn, I just don't want to be bleeding down to my shoes on the very first night." And I said, "Rob, remember that bump you told me I might want to reserve for special occasions?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "I think this might be the special occasion." So here I am. I'm holding Jeff, I don't know if Jeff had the boot and was aiming for Robert. Robert ducks. Boom, I get it. I take the Nestea Plunge, and I think Meltzer was there. I think there was some kind of fan convention going on. Not a convention, but a fan trip. And I split the back of my head open, and that's where Robert Fuller, who has no official medical experience, but he's been around a lot of wounds. So when a guy like that, third generation promoter, oh damn, Jack, he says that it looks like a big old pussy sitting on your head, son. I don't know whether I should stitch it and then he offers the second option. That was the night in Memphis. And so you think, all right, we take that item off the menu, and it's like, no, not so fast. All the other cities ran a week later, because of the TV delivery of the tapings. So we actually waited 8 days to do it we did it that coming Saturday night in Nashville. Then we did it in Louisville. So by the time it comes to Evansville, Indiana, that Wednesday in front of like 120 people, I begged off. I said, I can't do it tonight.
The most famous one is probably the Clash.
Yeah.
That's the first time I remember.
Yeah, I'd say that's more famous. Even though I did it with Taker in the Boiler Room Brawl.
Yep.
I did it with Rick in the I Quit match. I did it at Spring Stampede, which we'll talk about, and I did it out of necessity and desperation. What's there.
Your first mainstream.
First mainstream one where people saw that bump was Clash of the Champions against Mascaras. Mills shows up only 10 minutes before the show starts. He's either missed his plane or intentionally or unintentionally. And I go from thinking I'm going to get a singles win against Rick Fargo, who was my first tag team partner, to Mill being here, and I've seen him work. I know he's hip toss. He's going to get his stuff in, and all I ask is to get in this one spot, and I've got to kind of fight for it. So the spot is I'm going to give him the backbreaker out on the floor. But when I go up to the ring apron and my back is turned to him, he's going to roll underneath the rope. So when I go to turn around, there's nobody there. And now I go to drop my elbow, there's nobody there. I turn around, Mill drop kick, off I go. Now I'll argue that Mill, he doesn't know me, so I don't guess he doesn't think he can trust somebody, on a simple move like a backbreaker. So Mill basically he puts his hands down.
Worst backbreaker
Yeah,
ever.
It's the worst backbreaker ever, right? But I think the timing on the other part of the spot was good.
Nobody remembered the backbreaker.
Yeah, and believable to when I turned around and I look and there's nobody home, boom. And now here's where corny keeps me alive. Jim Ross and Jim Cornette. And Corny, I think, was an under-heralded color man. I thought he was really sharp, really good, but his first priority was always to get the talent over. And he gives that great line, you know, this is 1990, so this is 8 years before Hell in a Cell, and JR has the immortal, iconic call, you know, God is my witness, he's been broken in half. But Jim Cornette at that time, Cactus Jack is dead. And now as I start to move, he says, no man could get up from that, but he's doing it.
Concrete, no human being could get back up after that, but he's doing it.
And now all I wanted to do was kick out. I wanted to kick out from that and then get beaten. And you know, I was overruled by Rick. So I was overruled. I thought that as one of their guys, not just somebody who was coming in, because it was Cinco de Mayo, I believe, and it was in Corpus Christi. I thought that would be a good way, a good character builder. Overruled on that, and I did the favor, and then I lost another match to Wolf Wild, the drummer of the house band, who was JT Southern. So at the end of that night, Tully's dad, Blanchard, Joe Blanchard, comes up and he starts like taking off his work gloves because he was setting up the ring. He goes, well, I might as well take a shot at you. You're 0-2. Another loss isn't going to hurt you. He was putting me over.
It's tremendous.
But it's like I couldn't even beat the drummer of a band, you know.
Yeah.
So I'm so glad that I came out of it with a little bit of the spotlight, and that's solely because Jim Ross and Jim Cornette made me look like I was the star of that match, even when I was getting no offense in whatsoever.
Is there a trick to taking the Nestea Plunge the right way?
No.
It's going to hurt no matter what.
It's going to hurt no matter what. Yeah, I mean, if there's a trick, it's not a trick. You need to land flat, because if you land on say you land kind of lower back butt first, then you're going to have the whiplash effect. But there's no right way there's no wise way to do it. And given what it did to me, internal bleeding was a sign you did it well.
So peeing blood was a good sign.
Peeing blood. No, I'm talking about spitting it up.
Oh, okay.
Spitting it up was my sign. Wow, that had to look good. Don't, please, for anyone out there, don't do it, because it's not worth it. Antonio Inoki was on the shelf for 8 months to a year after, I think he inadvertently did it in a match with Hogan. Bad looking bump. It's a bad, mean, tough bump, and there's no
magic to concrete.
There's no loophole. There's absolutely no loophole.
So the rest of this match, though, my goodness, as if the Nestea Plunge isn't enough, then, they hit your head on the guardrail. And, I mean, it says here that you're in the hospital afterwards. Do you remember this?
I don't. I do not remember being in the hospital. I'm not saying it didn't happen, but maybe they took me there as a precautionary measure because, it's a, corporation. I don't remember being in the hospital.
Would you bullshit your way if you did go to the hospital? Like, oh, I'm fine. I feel fine.
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably. But I think if I'd gone there, I would. I remember when I was having trouble after taking those bumps in Memphis, actually going to a chiropractor and having some x-rays taken. At that time, he said that my spine didn't have the curve in the middle, that it was pushed forward, presumably he thought because of these bumps I described to him.
Had he seen them? Had the chiropractor seen them?
The bumps? No, because none of them were on TV.
Yeah, okay.